In any classroom, what students know and can do, the ways they learn best, and what they're interested in can vary greatly. All of these differences require responses from teachers so that learning can occur. There are certainly times when students should have a say in how they will learn. In a differentiated classroom, there are times when teachers make choices and there are times when students make choices. Students like to make choices about their learning. It gives them a sense of power and it gives them more ownership of their work.
Who else? What else?
I would choose the listening center because you get to listen to something fun and you also learn something at the same time.
As discussed in the tiering videos, when differentiating instruction based on student readiness, it's best for teachers to choose which assignments students will complete. Students won't always make the best choices in terms of appropriate challenge. Many will choose something too easy for them, and some might even choose something beyond their reach. Some challenge is a good thing, too much is not. A great time to offer students choice is when we're differentiating instruction based on learning profile, or how students learn best. There are many possible things to consider as we respond to different learning profiles. Student groupings, for instance. Do students prefer to work alone or in small groups? Do they need an organized workspace, or is clutter okay? Some students prefer quiet environments, others louder ones. Obviously, we can't change our environment to meet every student's need at every point, but we can work to ensure variety so that students' needs are met fairly frequently. We can also consider whether our students are visual, auditory, or tactile learners. Are they predominantly left-brained or right-brained? Do they tend to be concrete or abstract thinkers? The list of possible ways to define a student's learning profiles goes on and on. A very practical theory for differentiating based on learning profile is Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences. Gardner tells us that people operate with different intelligences, and that while we have at least a little of each one, we tend to be strongest in one or two. He's identified 8 intelligences, or what he believes are ways in which we perceive and respond to the world around us. Verbal linguistic learners are language people. They learn through reading, writing, speaking, and listening. Mathematical logical learners are into numbers and patterns. They are often abstract thinkers who like to see or create connections. It should be of little surprise that people with these 2 types of intelligences, verbal linguistic and logical mathematical, tend to do pretty well in school. Visual spatial students create visual pictures in their heads. They see things mentally that other people may not. They're also adept at using and creating visual information. Musical students are interested in and often have high skill in music. They note sound and rhythm not noticed by others. Kinesthetic learners can express themselves through movement and they manipulate objects effectively. They are on the move, but they're not necessarily unfocused. They're capable of showing what they know through movement. Interpersonal and intrapersonal intelligences involve people's relationships with themselves and others. Interpersonal learners tend to have a heightened sensitivity to the feelings and needs of others, while intrapersonal learners are keenly aware of their own feelings and needs. Gardner's 8th and newest intelligence is the naturalist, which addresses those who focus on and order the natural world. Gardner is constantly in the process of rethinking his theory, and there are certainly those in the field of psychology and education who don't agree with it. But the fact is that it's had a profound impact on how teachers think about instruction. It asks us to expand beyond relying only on verbal and mathematical kinds of tasks. So instead of offering one way of working with knowledge, understandings, and skills, we look for ways to address the different learning needs of our students. What I particularly like about this model of instruction is that it reminds us of the need for variety in our teaching. Finding out your students' intelligences can actually be fairly easy. Given descriptions of the different intelligences, older students can probably tell you which ones they have. There are many inventories, some self-scoring, that can give you an idea about students' intelligences. They are usually easy to score and administer and are often easily found on the internet. Assessing younger children's intelligences can be a bit trickier. Here it's based more on observation. Some teachers like to set up centers with activities focused on each intelligence and then observe where their students choose to work most often. Certainly, parents can be tapped for their knowledge of what students choose to do at home, and this information can provide some evidence about intelligences. Regardless of how we come to learn about students' learning profiles, using Gardner's theory helps to ensure that we're meeting a greater range of student needs in our classrooms. While it's true that we each have intelligences that we are most comfortable using, Gardner argues that teachers should provide opportunities for students to work with all the different intelligences. This means that just because I may be strong in verbal intelligence but weaker in spatial intelligence, I should still be asked to work on visual types of tasks. Intelligences can be developed. One thing to avoid is handicapping students by forcing them to work in a way that is not, say, intelligence fair on assessments of what they have come to know, understand, and be able to do. For example, if a student is not verbal linguistic, you're not likely to get a good read on what he grasps by asking him to represent it in words. True, there are times when all students need to read, write, listen, and speak, but mixing those skills up with other skills that relate to other intelligences helps to ensure that we're meeting a greater range of learning needs. As with tiering, you can apply multiple intelligences to just about anything you ask students to do. So students studying weather might read a short piece about barometers for homework. They then choose from 2 assignment options. They can choose to write a letter from a barometer to a thermometer explaining what makes a barometer a better weather instrument. Or they can create an illustration or diagram showing how a barometer works and what it measures. Both options ask students to explain what they have read and what they've learned about barometers and what barometers do, but they would appeal to different learners and probably ensure success with the assignment for a greater number of students. A great time to use multiple intelligences, or MI, is toward the end of a unit of study or after several discussions or activities when students are beginning to synthesize what they've learned. MI is a great tool for designing project options that focus on our objectives while allowing student choice. So for instance, after reading and discussing the children's book, The Brementown Musicians, students choose to do one of the following to show their understanding of the story's setting. They can design a picture postcard that one of the animals in the story will send to his former owner. The postcard will show Brementown as the animal sees it. Or students can create a short travel brochure or a speech about Brementown that encourages animals to move there. For a third option, they can create a Venn diagram or a double bubble map showing the similarities and differences between Brementown and where they themselves live. As with the weather homework example, students are working on the same objective, that is to be able to describe a story's setting, but they have choice as to how they'll do that. Because of this, they'll have greater ownership of their work, and it's highly likely that they'll be much more successful with it. Some suggestions for making your use of MI effective include maintaining clarity about your objectives. Because this model invites us to be creative in our planning, which I think is a very good thing, it's very easy to get off track in the attempt to provide variety for our students. As with any form of differentiation, if we lose sight of our goals, we've lost effectiveness in our instruction. As you plan activities based on multiple intelligences, force yourself to really evaluate each activity. Ask yourself, is this really staying true to my objectives? Is this the best way to highlight them? Piggybacking on that idea, if you can't find a meaningful way to address an intelligence, don't worry about it. There's just no way to teach everything using all of the intelligences. Look for a solid fit with your objectives, your activities, and the intelligences. Also, it helps to be aware of your own intelligence. Your own learning profile is probably impacting the way you teach. Even if I'm not highly visual myself, I certainly need to make sure that I'm finding ways to tailor my instruction to my visual spatial learners. Finally, as with tiering, it's important to give students a chance to share what they've worked on and what they've come to understand. So with the barometer and story setting examples, a great closure to the activities would be to ask students to share their work in mixed learning profile groups. So those who completed verbal assignments will have a chance to learn from those who chose visual or logical assignments, and vice versa. Again, this gives value to what everyone has done and helps to maintain a sense of community in the classroom. There are a great many resources about multiple intelligences available in bookstores and teacher supply stores and on the internet. When examining them, it's a good idea to use the criteria mentioned previously. Are the activities linked by a common objective or set of objectives? Are they more than just a collection of fun activities that address the same general topic area? Are the activities meaningful and challenging and engaging? Are they truly respectful of my students' differences? All of these are important considerations as you find and create activities based on MI. Your assignment is to spend some time looking for additional information about MI and for inventories to measure the intelligences. Then, use an inventory to assess your students and your own intelligences. Note what you learned and reflect on how you can use that information in your teaching.